There's only one thing better than normal: the paranormal. Monsters, ghosts, aliens, anything beyond our understanding that defies explanation can be thrown into the paranormal pile. Today, I've got a few allegedly true stories about paranormal encounters that are especially nightmare-inducing. Enjoy, and if you want your story narrated, share it with us at darkstories.org. I'm looking for scary workplace stories, Yosemite National Park encounters, and generally any scary story you have. Now, let's begin. Under the Bridge, from Brisket. Used to work at a coffee shop. The place was open from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Closing shift by myself because the manager wanted to leave early every night. The night in question was the usual: insomniacs or third shifters picking up coffee in the drive-thru late into the shift. Maybe the occasional pot enjoyer stopping by for one of our triple chocolate muffins. I don't blame them, because they're insanely delicious. After work, like I always do, I hop on my bicycle and turn on the little headlight I bought. I really don't like the idea of getting run over on my way home, so I've got my reflectors and a nice little headlight up front. The area I live in is a small town, but it's wealthy enough that the sidewalks are adjacent to bike paths, which are basically expanded sidewalks for folks who want to bike back and forth. Around here, it is legal to just ride your bike in the road if you wanted to, but even with all my precautions, I'm not taking any chances. Can't tell you how many drunks I've served through the drive-thru at night. Another crowd who especially loves the triple chocolate muffins. So yeah, I'd rather not share the road with them. Taking the bike path was just safer and more scenic. The bike path is about 2.5 miles long. It connects to my suburbs. About halfway there, though, there's this little bridge that I have to pass underneath. The bridge is mostly decorative. It doesn't pass over water, and it doesn't connect anything important, really. It's more of a place where boomers can stop by and get a good view of things, check out the scenery, have a nice little walk. After riding this bike path so many times after work, I began to get more and more creeped out by this bridge. I mean, it was nice and well maintained, but having to pass underneath something that blocks out all light for several feet, it can make a guy feel a little paranoid. Luckily, it was always a brief moment. It only took about 6 or 7 seconds to bike through. On one occasion, I scared a possum, and he hissed at me as I passed by, and I nearly wet myself. Overall, that had been my most creepy experience with the bridge, until this experience. That night, as I passed underneath, shadows encapsulated everything under the bridge as usual. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary from as far as I could tell, but keep in mind that anything close to the ground would be practically invisible. That's why I kept so much attention on the ground as I biked through, making sure I didn't spook yet another possum that I didn't see. Everything was fine and dandy until I was about to make it all the way through. Just before I came out the other side, something fell from the top of the bridge right in front of me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw wisps of straight black hair and what appeared to be the fabric of a near-white nightgown. It was so sudden and so close that I didn't have the time to dodge it. 1, then 2 bike tires ran over it, and I quickly fell off the bike, landing on my side and picking myself back up to see what the heck just happened. I scanned the area just in time to see a pale foot pull itself into the shadows underneath the bridge. Whoever had just dropped to the ground in front of me had crawled into the shadows where I could no longer see them. Completely tripping balls at this point, I call out, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" My voice kind of just reverberates off the walls under the bridge. I don't see any movement. I wait a minute or two, waiting for a response, but there isn't one. Now, I was darn sure that I had run over somebody, and that same someone had fallen off the albeit shallow bridge. If they were pulling themselves across the ground like that, surely they were hurt. I took a couple of hesitant steps forward. I got a little mad at myself. Someone could be hurt in this emergency situation, but I was still scared of the dark of that bridge. What's wrong with me? I thought. I called out again. Hello? Anyone there? I've got a phone. I can call 911 if you need me to. Once again, no verbal response, but this time, I did hear a certain noise, a scuffing or scraping sound, as if someone was crawling on their hands and stomach across clean concrete. I remember thinking, crap, they're definitely hurt. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight. My phone was really cheap at the time. I couldn't afford much better, and as such, the flashlight function of it was extremely abysmal. Its beam was so narrow, and it barely lit up anything, even in something as dark as under the bridge. So I wasn't able to illuminate much of the underpass, even though it was so short. A normal flashlight could have done it, but not my phone. Terrified that I'd hurt someone who was already going to be hurt from the fall, I began taking step by step into the underpass, sweeping my light left to right, then right to left, looking for any sign of a person who was hurt. I made it all the way to the opposite side, not finding anything. I stood there on the edge of the shadows of the underpass, almost entirely sure at that point that I was just tired, that I hadn't seen anything. Maybe that jouncing I'd felt when I passed through was just some rocks. Maybe I didn't run over anyone at all. I then looked up for the first time since scanning the underpass, when I felt something in my face. It was black hair? Some of it even got in my mouth. I jumped back instinctively, and when I looked forward, a long straight set of hair was dangling from the top of the bridge. Then, all at once, it was pulled back up, and I swear I heard laughter above me. The laughter went from this side to the other, before I heard something like someone jumping down. I turned around, and at the end I'd just come from was a girl on all fours. Her hair was unusually long, longer than her body. It covered her face and trailed behind her. She stood just in front of my bike. By then, I required a new pair of pants. I had no idea what was going on. Was some little girl pranking me? If so, how did she get from the shadows below the bridge to on top of it so fast without being seen? A sudden wave of courage rushed over me. It appeared to be nothing more than a little girl messing with me, and I was a 22-year-old grown man at the time. Why was I so scared? Steadily, I walked towards her through the shadows. I was done playing games. I wanted to get back on my bike and go home, and so I just marched forward, towards my bike, towards this creepy little girl with her face veiled by hair. The closer I got, the more I realized how dirty she was, and as soon as I got halfway, she scurried on all fours into the shadows. I couldn't see her anymore, but I could hear her crawling around in the dark. My courage quickly dissipated, and fear came rushing back in. I turned my head from side to side trying to spot her. I struggled to find her with my weak flashlight on my phone. A couple of times, my flashlight reflected dark, greasy hair, but she was crawling around too fast to be pinpointed. Then it all went quiet. She stopped. I was motionless. I waited in sheer terror. I glanced to my bike. It was so close, maybe 5 or 6 yards away, but I didn't dare move. I thought to myself, come on, just run for it. Move your legs. But my body didn't listen. I must have stood there in silence for about 3 minutes. Until hair, black as the shadows around me, slowly lowered over my face from above, and I took off, screaming and running for my bike. I hopped on, got a running start, and pedaled as fast as I could, and I only looked back when I thought I was a safe distance away, right before turning around the bend on the bike path. When I looked back there, I saw a little girl with long black hair waving to me from atop the bridge. That experience led to me financing a clunker of a car so that I didn't have to take that bike path any longer. That next day at work, though, I remember asking my coworkers if they'd ever seen anything weird in that underpass. Sure enough, I wasn't alone in this. Greg, an older coworker, told me he used to walk those bike paths, and the one time he walked through that underpass at night, a small, sharp-nailed hand had grabbed him by the ankle. He said it was an experience he didn't want to share until I brought up mine. Jennifer, another coworker, hung out with her friends there one night, smoking, when one of them suddenly spotted in the shadows a little girl's head with really long hair. No matter what they said to her, she wouldn't reply or even move. When Jennifer herself approached and reached out to touch her, the hair fell to the ground like it was a wig, and she said she heard crawling noises in the dark as they all ran. So, yeah, that was my creepy or creepiest after-work experience. If I had any advice to give, it would be to avoid underpasses that are too dark, especially at night. Beep, beep, beep. From Anonymous. June 26, 2013. This happened to me last night, and I haven't been able to sleep since. I was hesitant to post about it, because I've been looking for some sort of explanation or something, trying to see what it was I saw outside now that it's light out. But I can't, and it's scaring the crap out of me. So I got home from work. It's almost midnight then. When the door opens at my house, the home security thing does a high-pitched beep, beep, beep chime. In the kitchen, I'm eating a late dinner before going to bed. But then I hear a door open, and the home thing went beep, beep, beep. But it definitely sounded like it came from outside. I'm sitting right by the back door, so I go check the front door. The front door has a screen door, a wood door that leads to a small entry room, then a second door inside that leads up the stairs into the house. These are loud as heck doors and really old. I didn't hear a screen door open, and I didn't hear the main door close. I didn't hear a second door open either. The door is still double locked, so no other doors are opened and nobody is standing outside. Okay, maybe it was the neighbor's door. Maybe they have the same system. I hear it again, and it sounds like it's coming from outside the front of the house. I look out the window. It looks like a deer is crawling on the yard with its belly to the ground. It stands up on its back legs, makes the door opening beeping sound with its head raised up in the air. It's not a deer. It looks like a guy with deer legs, too dark to see what the heck is going on for sure. What the heck? It sounded like a dog barking "I'm home" while trying to vomit. Then it starts galloping away across the street. Beep, beep, beep. It starts to shake. It's raining out at the time the thing opens its mouth and holds its head up. Then it starts digging furiously at the grass across the street with its front arms, legs, or whatever. It puts its head near the hole like it's looking inside. Then it keeps walking down the street, going beep, beep, beep. It tilts its head back again to drink the rain, then digs at the ground. It keeps doing this down the block before galloping away down Division, away from the city. Now, I do not live in a rural area. The deer population typically stay down towards Melrose Park off of Thatcher by the river. I live just outside of Chicago, literally a block west of the city limits. I've never seen anything like this, or heard of anything like this before. I'm freaking crapping myself right now. This seems more paranormal than anything else. I've been Googling similar stories and trying to find some sort of typical scientific explanation for this sort of thing, but I can't even find a similar story. My instinct tells me it's a crazy homeless guy, but the legs were bent back like a deer's. It wasn't built like a human being, and it was definitely not wearing clothes and looked to have a full body of fur. I don't use drugs. I was not tired, and I was 100% lucid, and I'm freaking horrified. Please tell me there's some sort of common explanation for crap like this. Yokai Encounters. From Anonymous. I'm a quarter Japanese and I was 16 years old. I moved to Japan to live with my aunt, uncle, and cousins. My aunt lived in a rural seaside town about an hour or two outside of Sapporo. The house faced a forest and mountains with the ocean right behind it. There were also some train tracks between the backyard and ocean, but the train fell into the ocean or something a few years back, and it's been defunct since. My aunt and uncle, who I'll call Rieko and Noriaki, have pretty much lived their lives in this town. Our cousins are both girls, twins, and a few months younger than me. I'll call them Yuiko and Aya. Noriaki is superstitious mostly because his parents were too. He loves to tell stories about yokai, whether they happened to him or someone he knew. They're all really entertaining. Rieko doesn't seem to believe it as strongly as he does. She's my dad's sister. Our family wasn't ever superstitious. Everything goes pretty well for the first few weeks. Aya and Yuiko introduced me to their friend Fumika, and we hit it off pretty well. I found out she's just as, if not more, superstitious than Noriaki. Combine that with teenage fearlessness, she wants to find these things. I don't believe in these things yet, but whatever. She didn't strike me as crazy. About a month after moving, it was pretty comfortable there. I liked taking walks, so on days off from school, I took walks in the forest and mountains to relax. One day I was walking as usual, when suddenly there was this giant freaking scream that boomed out of nowhere. It sounded like someone being murdered. This is Japan, so I can't brush it off to just mountain lions. Then there was a different scream, but it came from the same direction deep in the forest. I yell out, "Who's there?" It's totally silent, nothing but my voice echoing. Something about the echo feels wrong. It's delayed and doesn't sound quite like me. Another scream, this time closer. Screw it, I'm not staying around for this bullcrap, I think. I turn around and I book it back home. Normally it's about half an hour to get to where I was. I walk slow. At my speed, I make it home in about 5 minutes. Noriaki's waiting for me at the door. He doesn't seem to even be surprised that I obviously sprinted home. He gets me some water and sits me down at the table. "It's harmless, don't worry." "What?" He smiles and says, "I heard the screaming too. I've heard it before." What the heck? I wondered. "How'd you know about that?" I asked. "I could hear it," he said. "Yamabiko are loud, but they're not dangerous." "Yamabiko?" He goes on to tell me about Yamabiko and how they echo back people's voices and can mimic any sounds they hear. Like really, really loud parrots, but they look like weird dogs. He seems happy to tell me about them, but suddenly he gets serious. "You're lucky that's all you ran into, Anon. There's much worse up there." Darn, so no more walks, I guess. "Let me come with you next time, just in case you run into those." I kinda liked being alone on my walks, but Noriaki was cool enough, so I agreed. We don't bring it up in front of Rieko or my cousins because they still think it's a bunch of folk stories. I'm not exactly convinced either, but I take Noriaki a bit more seriously. About 2 weeks after the Yamabiko incident, I was still walking, and Noriaki was good company. We heard some out-of-the-ordinary stuff, but nothing of any note. I told Fumika the story and she got excited. She wanted to go to the forest near my house. Okay, why not? I planned to meet a few days later with her, when Aya decided to tag along too. I kinda felt bad breaking my promise to Noriaki, but Fumika is cute, and my desire to get laid later outweighs Noriaki. Sorry, man. She shows up, and Aya and I make something up about how we're going to the store or something. Rieko is okay with it. Noriaki is a little suspicious, but in hindsight, he might have been nervous. We walk down the street until we're out of their sight, then duck into the forest. A cloudy day plus the tree cover made the forest darker than usual. Aya already looks properly spooked by the atmosphere, but Fumika is just freaking fearless. I keep on walking for a while, but find nothing. I'm getting jittery. Aya looks like she's about to soil herself, and even Fumika looks uneasy. At this rate, we'll just get lost, so we decided to head back down. Then there was a thunderclap. We started moving faster, but the forest was getting darker. It began to rain, so we took shelter under a good-sized tree. I've no idea how long we were out there for. We thought someone might come looking for us. Actually, we kind of hoped they would. Somewhere between the trees, I see a light. It keeps bobbing back and forth, weaving through the trees. All three of us keep watching this light. Aya says it's probably someone else on the mountain that could help us. I'm not exactly sure what she means at first, but she probably thought it was a flashlight. Aya stands and calls to them for help. It seems to point in our direction and starts moving towards us, keeping up that bobbing motion. It gets closer and closer, but I still can't even see an outline of the person who might be holding it. As it moves towards us, I can't help but think how wrong this felt. Why didn't the person answer us? And it wasn't even that dark, so why have a flashlight? Something tells me to look to my left, and I see another one of these things bobbing around. Then another. Further off, but getting closer. What the actual heck? Fumika looks really scared now, and suddenly a bolt of lightning lights up the forest. Just the shadows of the trees. But wait, just the trees. Nobody's holding the lights. I try to tell Aya and Fumika, but the words won't come out. As the light keeps getting closer, I notice it's blue, not like a flashlight, and it's flickering. I keep trying to talk to Aya. At the same time, Fumika is paralyzed, and she'd probably already noticed what I did. Suddenly, we hear someone yelling in the distance, getting closer fast. Someone's crashing through the forest looking for us, and I recognize the voice. It's freaking Noriaki. He comes into view and sees the lights and starts to really freak out. We sprint towards him, and I pass one of the lights. From what I could see, it was just a ball of blue fire a little bigger than my fist. We get the heck out of the forest as fast as we could and get inside. We're all terrified, Fumika being a ghostly pale. Noriaki tells Aya to take a shower as she had soiled herself. When she leaves the room, he gives us a cold stare. I thought he was about to blow a fuse, but instead he just sighs. I ask him how he knew we were in the forest. He said he didn't. He just felt something wrong and rushed off to the woods. He saw us surrounded by these fire wisps. That's when we saw him too. He called the fire Onibi, which is identical to the will-o'-the-wisp. a paranormal fire created from a dead animal or a person's spirit can also be created from strong, raw malice. It's said to lure people away and consume their life force, leaving nothing but a dead husk behind. Apparently, they trap the life force inside of them, basically imprisoning your soul for eternity. The Yamabiko wasn't really that much to spook me, but Christ, this scared the heck out of me, and Noriaki knows it. He warned me about the forest again. I listened this time because I know what he meant before when he said there was worse in the forest. He continues about how people get lost in the forest and never come back. This happened when he was a kid. He goes on until Aya finishes her shower. I hear him tell her later that day that it was just a natural phenomenon caused by lightning electrifying some gas in the air, but he knows it's bullcrap. Fumika goes home when the rain lets up, but it keeps on raining all day and night. I can't sleep well that night. I swear I see blue glows at the edge of the forest. This one haunts me to this day because I can't stop thinking about how we'd fallen right into their trap and how easily they could have killed us. The rest of the spring and summer pass uneventfully. With all our free time and summer break, you'd think we'd find something to do, but no. Again, very small, insignificant events that were probably something that wasn't yokai occurred. But then one day in fall, Noriaki takes Aya, Yuiko, and I to his family grave to pray and keep it clean. While there, I noticed someone off to the side. A woman, really pale and dressed in white. Not quite out of place enough to set off any major alarms and still human. Noriaki notices and whispers not to stare. I stop. There's no red flags yet because I figured he was trying not to be rude. We finish up, but I can still see the woman. She hadn't moved an inch. Maybe she's just busy, I thought. Our car was the only one there, but maybe she walked. I start seeing her out of the corner of my eye as we go home. She's a yokai. I try to tell Noriaki about it. Rieko overhears. She goes rigid and leaves the room. No clue what that was about. I assume I saw a ghost and I just check in with Noriaki to make sure it doesn't want to hurt me. He doesn't know. So that night I try to sleep knowing there's a ghost following us around that may or may not want to kill us all. And I couldn't sleep. I tried to make myself forget about it by watching some YouTube. It's kinda weird to listen to English again after speaking Japanese this entire time. Eventually I fall asleep. The next day I'm at school. One of my cousin asks Rieko if she was in her room last night. She looks confused and says, "No, I wasn't." "I thought I saw you come in." Rieko tells her it was a dream, but I'm silently crapping myself. Not only is there a ghost that might want me dead following us around, but it's gotten into our house. I ask Fumika for a hand. Her yokai obsession has gone away some because of the onibi, but she still knows her stuff. After an intense questioning session, she decides it's a non-violent ghost that got attached to us because we paid attention to it. Fumika agrees to come over and see if she can do anything about it, but admits there may not be much she can do. She shows up the next day. Nothing especially spooky happened that day, just the usual of seeing it out of the corner of my eye. She instantly says she can feel it. She goes around the house for a while trying to make something happen, but nothing does. She looks kind of sad about it, but I really wasn't all for running into spooky ghosts right now. Later that night, it's still hard to sleep because, again, spooky ghost. I'm trying to sleep when suddenly I feel a wave of sadness come over me. Not actually sad, but more like being next to a friend who's really sad. My stomach turns. I'm really afraid to open my eyes, but I do anyway. At the end of my room is the same woman from the graveyard. She doesn't look like she wants to hurt me. She doesn't look scary at all, just sad. I'd probably say she was kind of cute too, if it wasn't for the being dead part. I work up the courage to ask what she wants. She shakes her head and comes closer. Now it's getting weird. She places a hand on my head. She says something about her son. I'm thinking that this ghost is going to drag me off thinking I'm her son. Then she takes a hand off my head, and she's gone. I never see her again after that. Later on in mid-autumn, Fumika and I are hanging out with Yuiko or Aya sometimes. It's a slow day one day, so I decided to head over to her place, which I can ride my bike to. She lives in an old house on the side of the mountain, so I usually walk my bike up. Otherwise, it's a pain to pedal up there even though it's not that far up. Still in civilization. Since it's on the mountain, it's surrounded by forest. I get to her house and she seems happy to see me. Her parents say hi to me. I know they like me. I play some video games with her for a while and time passes really quick. Suddenly, I need to go to the bathroom. I excuse myself and go to the restroom. It might be an old house, but it's been updated to be a little more modern. I notice it's getting dark out. Not that odd, since it's autumn. The sun sets at like 7 here in the summer. Still means I've been here for a few hours, though. Through the tiny bathroom window and through the trees outside, I can see a dog moving around. I just assume it's someone's dog they let off the leash. I do my business, wash, and go back downstairs and continue playing video games. There are some big sliding doors in the living room, so I can see the tree line from there. I keep feeling like I see something moving in the tree line, but every time I try to look at it, it stops. Whatever. I kick Fumika's butt in Street Fighter 4. I turn to her to be smug about it, and she's staring at the tree line. I ask what's up. She said, "Oh, I thought there was a dog out there." I reply, "I saw one earlier. It's probably one of your neighbors." But none of her neighbors have dogs. In that case, it's probably a stray. We did have a classmate who lost his dog, so maybe that was it. We open the sliding door and call to it. I can still see the shape moving around in the tree line. Seems to be closer and we can see it better. It's definitely a dog, but it doesn't come to us. We go back inside after trying and failing to call it. By then, I'm almost ready to leave. I check outside again, and the freaking dog is sitting in a tree like it's the most normal thing. As far as I remember, dogs aren't known for their ability to climb trees. I point this out to Fumika, and she looks over. The dog thing seems to get a little bigger and jumps out of the tree, gliding to the ground. The reason it looks bigger is because the thing had wings. Screw that. I tell Fumika I'm going to go home. She tells me not to leave the house, then calls her dad, telling him about the dog. He leaves the room and comes back with a baseball bat and a little notebook. He goes outside, starts yelling at the dog, and I didn't really catch most of it. But the dog runs off into the forest. Fumika says it's okay for me to leave now. I ask her what that was. She says it's called a hainu, but her dad says it's not. "The only hainu I've heard of has been dead for hundreds of years," he said. Instead, he thinks it's a kitsune, or other shape-shifting yokai that likes to take the form of hainu. Apparently, it's been around the house for a few years, but hasn't hurt anyone, just likes to mess with them. I don't really care what it is. I just go home as fast as I can. Thankfully, there are no winged dogs on the way back. The only abnormal thing that happened during the winter was how much it freaking snowed in Hokkaido. Nothing really happens during spring except Fumika starts getting feelings for me. Nice. Summer break, it's several weeks, no longer than a month in Japan because year-round school. I'm hanging out with cousins and Fumika a lot more. Some week in the middle of summer break, the four of us go walking back home after blowing a bunch of money at the tiny arcade the town has. We're close to home when this smell hits. It was like rotting fish. Considering we lived by the ocean, it wasn't that weird, but still it stank. I kept walking home and I slapped on my handy-dandy face mask. It doesn't help a whole lot, but makes it tolerable. I drop Fumika off at her house because it's a little closer than ours. Cousins and I are walking back towards our house, and the smell is still there. It seems to get stronger as we walk home. We're all gagging from the smell at this point, thinking a bunch of fish died on the shore or something. Finally, we get home and the smell goes away. We ask Noriaki and Rieko about the smell. They say they haven't smelled anything weird. Again, we do live by the ocean, so I just wrote it off as that. The following day, Yuiko says she feels sick. She's running a temperature of 38.5 Celsius. She spends the day on the couch or in her bed. I take shifts taking care of her with the rest of the family. Fumika comes over to help out. I'm pretty sure we're her only friends. Rieko wants us to go to the store to get some stuff for Yuiko. She hands me a list and money, tells Fumika to go with me. We go and get the stuff, then start coming back home. The rotting fish smell is still there, strong as ever, so we rush back and give the stuff to Rieko. We don't mention the smell this time. Noriaki takes Fumika home and the day passes normally. At night, I stayed up late, messaging Fumika. That's when I begin to hear movement outside. I think it's the wind or a random animal, but the movement keeps up. The longer it goes on, the less I think it's the wind or some animal. I stop and stay quiet, and I listen. The most I can hear is the normal nighttime sounds and Yuiko making noises in her sleep. I figure she's probably having a fever dream. Whatever, I go back to my phone. I start to hear movement outside again and look out the window. A big black mass is moving away from the house. It looks like a lump of shadows, or a black figure of a man, dressed in a black winter coat. It's moving away from the house kind of fast. I know you can start seeing things when you're tired, so I say goodnight to Fumika and go to sleep. The next day, Yuiko is still sick, and her temperature has risen to 38.8 Celsius. The day passes about the same. Yuiko's boyfriend comes over to take care of her. Aunt and uncle probably okay with it because Yuiko is way too exhausted and sick to do anything. I ask him about the fish smell. He has no idea what I'm talking about though. Either it's gone or he has no sense of smell. I walk outside for a little bit and it's actually gone. Thank God, it was really awful. I spend the rest of the day talking to Yuiko's boyfriend and taking care of her. He's a cool enough guy. A little oblivious sometimes, but nice regardless. That night, seemingly for no reason, I wake up at 1. It freaking stinks like rotting fish so much. I sit up coughing and I notice the window. Something has its face pressed up against it. It's definitely not human. It has jet black skin, eyes that are pretty much bugged out, and it's got this giant tongue that's hanging out of a hole in its face that I guess was a mouth. As soon as it notices me, the thing shrinks down about a meter. I don't mean to say it shrank, I mean its face and hands lowered themselves towards the ground. Frozen in shock, I watch it run off down the road, and the rotting fish smell goes away. I'm not sure what to do now. Noriaki would be mad if I woke him up. I silently just freak out until the sun comes up. Then I sleep most of the day. Apparently Yuiko's fever went down some. Occasionally I get up to eat and use the bathroom and some other things. As far as I care, this day barely even happened. But the night certainly did happen. I can't sleep because I'm scared of that black thing, and my sleep schedule's all messed up by sleeping all day. I'm wide awake and hyper aware of everything. Nothing happens for several hours. Then around 1:30, I hear sounds from Yuiko's room. Someone is moving around in there. Might have left it alone, but one thing made me change my mind. There's a certain smell. I'm sure you can guess which smell that is. Rotten freaking fish. It gets really strong really fast. Trying not to gag, I get out of bed and rush into Yuiko's room. The thing I saw at the window was on all fours, leaning over her and using its freaking terrifying-looking tongue to lick her entire body. Not like that, but more like how a dog might lick your face. I'm petrified just watching this thing. Yuiko is groaning as it sticks its tongue down her throat. This is what snaps me out of my trance. My brain doesn't even bother to go into Japanese mode. I scream, "What the heck?" in good old American English. Suddenly, it seems like the entire house starts moving. I hear Noriaki get up. I hear movement from Aya's room. Then, Yuiko wakes up with this thing's tongue stuck down her mouth. She makes a gurgle as it retracts its tongue from her throat. Then she starts screaming. I hear Aya open her door, but turns the corner into the bathroom and vomits. Noriaki rushes into the room and turns the light on before the thing can escape. I see it entirely now. Looks like a large, bald man with pure black skin, wearing a black robe like a monk's. Its eyes are bugged out of its head, giving it a permanent expression of surprise. Its nose is malformed. The way it's stuck on top of its protruding lips makes it look like a turtle. Its clawed hands make it look even more like one. Its ears are way too big for its head, like if you took someone's ears and pulled on the tops and lobes until they were stretched beyond recognition. It makes some sort of ungodly hiss and shrinks down. It freaking slithers backwards out the window. Yuiko is losing her mind. Noriaki goes to try and comfort her. Aya is still over the toilet, and I'm trying not to vomit. Rieko rushes into Yuiko's room to help Noriaki console her. Somehow they convince her it was a hallucination from her fever, and that Noriaki had come to check on her, and she thought it was me. Obviously bullcrap, but okay. In the morning, Noriaki goes with me to the town's temple and talks to the priest, agrees to come back to the house, and does some sort of blessing to keep the black turtle monk creature away. It must have worked, because I never saw that freaking thing again. Yuiko slowly gets better. Later, I ask Noriaki about what that thing was. It's kinda scary that he didn't know. Every time I smell something fishy now, I think about that black monk thing. This one has stuck with me since it happened. For another few months, everything stays away, probably because of the blessing. Fall passes and nothing happens, and winter comes. Fumika and I have started dating now, and I see her regularly. Her parents are okay with me coming over. I usually ask Noriaki to take me to her place because it's colder than Frosty's balls, and the road's way too snowy to walk on. He's fine with it because he's friends with her dad and likes to see him anyway. Sometime mid-December, over at her house, she and I are just huddled under a blanket watching TV. Noriaki and her dad are talking and seem to be having a good time. It's comfy. Maybe about 2 or 3 hours later, I notice that Noriaki and her dad have stopped talking. I look over at them and they're both just staring out the sliding doors at the trees. I turn to look out there. Not sure what I'm looking for, but remember the Hainu, or Kitsune, or whatever I saw before and think maybe that's it. Fumika seems to catch on. Soon we're all just staring out there. I try to ask Noriaki what he's looking at. He just shushes me and points outside. I can almost make out a shape in the trees. Still thinking it's what I saw before, but can't tell it from the trees because it blends in well, I then see movement. That's when it hits me. Whatever it is, this thing is huge. I mean, it's not that big, but compared to any normal animals around here, this was larger. Maybe a bear. There is a species native to Hokkaido, something like a grizzly bear, but I never saw one in these woods. Besides, it was winter and they should be hibernating. I go back to watching TV. Maybe it hadn't slept yet or woke up to eat something. Fumika's dad gets up and closes the curtains of the window in the kitchen, then goes to the doors and draws those curtains. Okay. A little later, Noriaki tells me we're spending the night. Says it's because of the snow. Didn't think it was snowing that much, though. Whatever, I don't care. I send a text to Rieko, says Noriaki already told her. We eat dinner with Noriaki, Fumika, and her family. They let me shower and put a futon down in the living room floor. Since they only had one, Noriaki volunteered to sleep on the couch. I just chill with Fumika until I almost drift off, around 11:30. Since everyone is tired by then, we all agreed to go to sleep. I sleep pretty well for about 2 or 3 hours. I wake up at about 2 to thumping on the sliding door. I start to get up to see what it is when Noriaki whisper shouts at me to stop. I almost crap myself because I didn't know he was awake, and all I could think was, oh crap, that black monk thing came back to finish the job. He tells me it's just a curious animal, and if I move too much it might hear it and get spooked. Says to just go back to sleep and ignore the sounds. Yeah, that's not happening. The thumps go on for a while. It kinda sounded like if you hit glass with a beanbag, soft and dull. Eventually, the thumps stop, and a different noise begins. Weird guttural sounds, but nothing that an animal couldn't make. It keeps going. Still could be an animal, but this is weird. Holy Mother of God, this thing is trying to talk. I'm trying my very best not to soil myself. A few minutes ago it was just animal noises, and now it sounded almost like a person, but it wasn't normal. Just so you know, dare means who. Dare desu ka means who are you, or who is it, but is more formal. That repeated for a few more minutes before going totally silent. Eventually I fall asleep from pure exhaustion. I go home in the morning, scraping the brick out of my boxers. Just keep trying to pass it off and pretend it was some animal.